Hey guys, today I'm going to show you the game that was on my radar for quite a while. I want to share with you my first impressions about Beautiful Desolation, a new isometric game from the studio behind such titles as STASIS and CAYNE. If you're a fan of old isometric RPGs like Fallout and Planescape Torment, after looking at this footage you probably noticed visual similarities with those games. Well, at least for me, this reminiscence was one of the reasons why I decided to give this game a chance. But I need to point out that despite how it looks, this is not an RPG game. From what I've seen so far, Beautiful Desolation is a pure point-and-click adventure game, so keep your expectations in check. There is no character creation, leveling up, skills or other RPG features. You just wander around locations, talk with NPCs and solve puzzles. It's like Stasis, but developers tried to improve its gameplay formula and bring it on a bigger scale. I was intrigued to see those improvements, but after the first hour of Beautiful Desolation, I'm not so sure that all of those changes were for the best. Okay, let's start on a positive note. Developers are definitely nailed the atmosphere and art style. This studio has truly mastered the art of creating the nostalgic isometric look from the late 90s. Graphics and UI really makes it feel like a handcrafted, unique piece of art. Though there are downsides in using pre-rendered backgrounds. On a big displays and resolutions above 1080p, upscaling artifacts might become too noticeable, especially if you will zoom in the camera to the max. And considering how detailed are the backgrounds, sometimes it's hard to understand which zone you can access and where the invisible wall starts. On the other hand, CGI cutscenes and NPC models in this game are extremely well done. For an indie studio, they did an amazing job. The story and the world of this game are very intriguing, though I must say that at the beginning it feels kinda rushed. Like, let's take the protagonist as an example. What we know about him is that he's a reporter, he lost his wife in a car accident, his brother is an alcoholic, and that's it. Honestly, for a game with a pre-created character, I expected a little more than this. And the game barely explains what happened during that Penrose structure arrival incident, and who are those Penrose allied guys who took over it. Seriously, what's the point of building up that 80s setting if you throw it out of the window within the first 5 minutes, and then switch to a post-apocalyptic future that has almost no connection with it? Don't get me wrong, I think that post-apocalyptic setting of this game is great and I'm curious to learn more about it, but it feels like writers skipped a bunch of important scenes and started to throw at you those unknown terms and names without a proper introduction. The dialogues with NPCs in this game are well written. Characters have their own unique personality and are fully voiced. Though the one thing I don't understand is why the game locks you out of some dialogue choices. Like, sometimes you have 3 dialogue options in which you can ask the details about different stuff from the game's lore, but in most cases you can only ask about one thing, and then dialogue moves forward without allowing you to ask about the rest. There's also a codex that you can access from your PDA, but it just contains hints for puzzles and concept art drawings without any additional info. I seriously don't understand why this game is so resistant in giving the details about its world to the player. After the first hour, it really feels like developers keep forgetting to tell the player everything they had in their minds, so you are not getting the full picture. But my main complaints about Beautiful Desolation are going to be about some of its game design choices. To be fair, it looks like developers listened to the feedback and tried to fix issues that their previous games had, but I can't say that they've managed to get everything right. Like, one of my main complaints about Stasis was the lack of the button to highlight hotspots on the screen. Well, now all the hotspots are marked with a green cube icon all the time, which is a welcome change. Problem is, they are shown not on the entire screen area, but only within a specific range around the protagonist, so you'll still have to run around the levels and see if you haven't missed anything. And for some reason you can see hotspot messages not when you click on them, but only when you hover the mouse over them, which is fine when you stand still, but if the protagonist is moving, then it becomes hard to keep the mouse over them and read the text. Yeah, there's a button to show all hotspot messages at once, but in some places they are overlapping each other. Also, don't forget about the range limit, so if your character will move out of the range, the message will just disappear. It's beyond me why they couldn't allow the player to just click on the hotspot in order to read the message, like it's done almost in every single adventure game. Another thing that caught my attention was the music, or to be more correct, the lack of it. You can hear the soundtrack in the main menu, cutscenes, and on the world map, but there's almost no music playing when you explore the locations. I'm not sure if that's a bug, but the only thing that you'll hear when you run around the levels will be your footsteps and occasional ambient nature sounds. Yeah, I find this weird, since if developers wanted to replicate old Fallout games, they should have known what significant role the music plays in creating the atmosphere. By the way, the soundtrack for this game was composed by Mick Gordon. Yeah, that guy who made godlike music for Tomb 2016, Killer Instinct and other games. But from what I've heard so far, personally I can't say that it sounds like something special. I mean, when something actually sounds instead of awkward silence. And finally, I'm not so sure that making locations more open was a good idea. Stasis was a very linear game and all of its levels were indoors, but at the same time it was precisely paced and it was always clear what you were supposed to do next. But in Beautiful Desolation, developers tried to make some sort of semi-open world, so now you can travel between locations like in old Fallout games. Problem is, after increasing the scale, developers didn't fill that additional space with something meaningful. Most of the levels that I've seen so far have a lot of empty places that don't even have a simple hotspot message. Usually there is like one or two actually important points of interest on the level, and you have to mindlessly run back and forth between them in order to progress further. There is no quest journal, and new important hotspots can appear without any warning after you did something in another location, so occasionally it feels like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Like, here is an example of that weird game logic that I've discovered during the first hour. So, in order to repair the transport ship and unlock the ability to travel around the world map, you need to get the avionics database and the neural network controller. After retrieving the database, I tried to talk with NPC that was nearby, but dialog hotspot didn't appear. I had to go to another location, install the database, and only then the game allowed me to talk with that NPC and get the remaining important item. And again, this game has no quest journal, and there was no warning that now, all of a sudden, the new dialogue becomes available somewhere else. I can imagine that situations like this might cause a lot of frustration if I'll get stuck somewhere again and have to figure out what to do next, but now with a dozen available locations that I need to backtrack. Okay, a few words about the performance and available settings. Beautiful Desolation is a PC exclusive, so as expected it has a decent amount of options that you can tweak. I can't say anything bad about the performance either. On my hardware with all graphical settings cranked to the extreme level at 5K resolution, the frame rate stayed above 200 FPS figures all the time. The game is controlled mostly by the mouse. There are a few hotkeys, but that's it. So if you prefer to play games with a controller, then I'm afraid you won't be able to do that. But other than that, from a technical standpoint, I can't say anything bad about this game, and I think it should work fine even on fairly old hardware. So yeah, after the first hour of playing Beautiful Desolation, I have mixed feelings about this game. I can't deny it looks gorgeous, I love the setting and dialogues, but the gameplay itself is not as exciting as visuals and writing. From what I've seen so far, it's hard to tell if this is a good or a bad game. It all depends on the amount of backtracking and how the story will be handled. I read that there is some sort of combat in this game, but after the first hour I haven't seen it yet. Developers also promise that dialogue choices actually have consequences, but again I can't say anything about that before I play more. And while those first hours got me worried a little that I will end up hating Beautiful Desolation with passion, I still plan to keep playing it and eventually make a full-fledged review on this game. Right now I can't either recommend or advise against it, just keep in mind that this game might not be something that you are expecting, and stuff like lack of quest journal might end up being a serious issue in the long run. Thanks for watching, hopefully this video was helpful for you, and be sure to subscribe if you want to know about more cool looking story driven games that you might have missed.